Hi there, my name is Mike Gonzalez with the Green Party of California Media Committee and Green Vigilante Media. Today we have another opportunity to talk to a promising young Green running for mayor of Berkeley, Aidan Hill. Aidan Hill is studying political science and public policy at UC Berkeley. Aidan was also a youth representative with the United Nations. Thank you for talking to us today, Aidan.
It's great to be here.
Aidan, so this is your second run, your second campaign for office. You previously ran for Berkeley City Council. Can you tell us about that campaign and what you learned?
Yeah, of course. And so this campaign is really in its exploratory phases. I've found that the mayor of Berkeley has been really unsatisfying in specifically addressing the issues for unhoused people, namely an ordinance criminalizing square footage, as well as stopping RV dwellers from living in the city. But what I learned in my last campaign primarily was that the city of Berkeley is very much taken over by this development trend, that we need more density near transit, that high rises are a viable alternative to our current situation, and that the city as a whole has a divide on what to do next. Some people want to move towards alternative housing, tiny houses, allowing people to sleep in sanctioned encampments, and others want to focus primarily on business needs as well as the high rises of new development projects. I'm saying that there can be a mixture of something that works for all of us, really, and that you don't have to criminalize poverty while at the same time making sure that the income brackets or the areas of Berkeley where people can meet their needs are getting met as well. And so one thing I learned in my last campaign specifically was that I just needed to know the people who are in Berkeley right now. Originally, I was in Berkeley in 2016, and a lot of my friends got destabilized from the area because of high cost of rent, inaccessibility as far as working. They were working in San Francisco instead of Berkeley where they lived. And it was just too tedious for people to stay here. And so I've had to learn a completely new set of actors, as well as I learned how to fundamentally represent a community of people. And I would say that's the community surrounding People's Park in District 7. And People's Park is an active resistance to the status quo. They are fighting the University of California, who has administrators living in Berkeley Hills, pushing all these development projects. But at the same time, these people don't have access to sanitation, reliable food mills, or really a safe place to just rest their head other than this park in the city of Berkeley. And so I'm trying to represent the people and making sure that the people's needs are met first before we do increases to profit. And that's really why I'm exploring this mayor campaign, to really say, well, maybe there's a different path that people of Berkeley can find better for themselves, and that no one has to suffer while we move into a climate insecure future.
Excellent. And then you talked a lot about homelessness, and that's one of your key issues. Is there anything else you want to share on that? Are there any solutions that you believe you could implement as mayor?
Yeah, so my basis of a solution is looking at the City of Refuge Act that the City of Berkeley already has. Berkeley has phenomenally and throughout its history have always included people who are either pushed out because of economic depression or environmental stress, such as the San Francisco earthquake in the early 1900s, and have welcomed people, regardless of their income bracket, regardless of who they are, into the city. I'm saying the city of Berkeley can do the same thing, the City of Refugee Act, with our homeless crisis that's going throughout California as a whole. And what do we do with that? That means we make sure that people have their needs met, their basic needs. So having access to water. Water is very scarce in the city. You have to be either around restaurants or you have to be around a public agency. We have to make sure that people have access to sanitation. That means being able to use the restroom, being able to wash their hands. They have to have access to a place to sleep that's safe. And so I'm particularly fond of the tiny homes model, but we can make sure that the number of shelters are at least within every single council district, or making sure that there's an encampment with regulations that are self-governed are well throughout the city of Berkeley. And then making sure that people have a means of income. And I'm really fond of workers' cooperatives. I think workers' cooperatives, and if we have people in the city giving the tools to groups of 10, 20 people who want to make a business, they can come together and set prices for themselves and really generate or add on to their own income. And so all these things are things that I've picked up or want to continue improving in the city of Berkeley.
Excellent. That's great. I'll tell you, if I can interject a little bit of my view, is I've talked to a couple of homeless people, and one thing that I've heard more than once is housing first. You know, a lot of places want them to be sober. A lot of them want them to resolve some of the issues that they have prior to getting housing, but you need housing before you can resolve those issues. And that's something that I've heard from homeless people, you know, out of their own mouths. So, you know, just to comment, and I like I like your perspective and your ideas to address that issue. Um, can you talk about the People's Park, because you've mentioned that? Can you give us a little background on what the People's Park is there in Berkeley?
Yeah. So People's Park is what I consider Berkeley's longest living encampment. It was originally, um, People's Park was originally apartment buildings that were used by students in the area. The first church that was established in Berkeley was in People's Park or off of Dwight Way. And the university had essentially bought out those properties, evicted all of the students living there, and bulldozed it back in the early 1960s. Student organizers at the time felt like it was the best opportunity to make a park, and so they came together and they, instead of parking in this vacant lot that would often be muddy, destabilized, they planted trees and made soup uh, pots for everyone. And it was really just a work day, but they couldn't have the park. The university saw this as an investment and put a fence around it, which led to a series of conflicts, riots, and to remember at the time, this was really where like the Gay Liberation Front was moving in, the feminist movement was going in, the Black Panther Party was in Oakland, right next to Berkeley. And the University of California saw a response that they weren't prepared for, and they encouraged Ronald Reagan to bring in national troops, which covered the entire city of Berkeley under a fog of tear gas. And that's people with respiratory issues and people as young as 5 often in the streets while this is happening. And so People's Park really became a movement of flowers against guns and became an open space according to the community's design. And the University of California, which at this time was stopping people from simply flowering in its properties on Sproul Plaza, became a centerpiece of the resistance to the status quo. And so that's its legacy. Currently, People's Park is a beacon for people to get away from climate change, right? If you want clean air, you go to a park. If you're trying to do some yoga, you go to a green space. And for this community in Southside, it's the only place where a green space is in District 7 at the very least. Where I live, like People's Park, me as a community member, I'm a street away. And so I think of it in the long-term future. I think about, well, if a natural disaster happens, where am I gonna go? Am I gonna stand under a shaky building, or am I gonna go to the cleanest or open space that I have possible? And so saving that park from being a private 100-year owned profit model is something that I think the Berkeley community is talking about and trying to organize towards saving, because it's not just about a plot of land, it's about something that the community can share together, the commons, and everyone is equal in that space, theoretically. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Um, so you talked a little bit about the environment. Can you talk about your views on climate change and sustainability and what you would do there as mayor?
Yes. So the goal is to become carbon neutral or carbon negative, to reduce more carbon emissions than you're generating as a whole. And so what does that mean? That means we need to get off of oil and gas dependency. One thing I want to do, for example, that can help generate a carbon neutral future is stop the emergence of 5G technology. 5G technology, other than its radio frequencies that are harmful for people, would bring more machinery into every part of the city of Berkeley because they're small cell towers. What we can do instead is use existing technology, one that's generated by a common non-governmental organization that can cover the entire city of Berkeley, that's safe privacy-wise as well as ecologically friendly. Another thing we can stop doing is we can help develop public transit systems. One thing I'd like to encourage as the mayor of Berkeley is creating some form of compensation for BART fares. BART is the Bay Area Rapid Transit System. So for example, if you have a certain number of bottles, you can put them into a area in the BART system, and then it will cost, or it will give you like $1.25, which can equal a one-way fare. I think that would be a great and sustainable way where people can recycle and get use out of it, but also improving public transit as a whole. Um, the city is walkable, luckily, but sometimes people use cars to get to their destinations. I want to make sure that people have access to bus fares reliably and on time. Other things I want to do, for example, one of my ideas that I hope the city would pick up is reusing plastic waste. So plastic is going into the oceans in an unprecedented way. There's going to be more plastic than fish in the oceans by 2050. And so what we can do is start, instead of using tar to make our streets, we can use reusable plastic for lining streetways, or making sure that if like the possibilities are endless if we can manage it. And so I want to use sustainability, reusability, focusing on solar power, really creating smart cities where communities come together rather than are spread out, and using transportation that way to really flip the game on reducing our carbon emissions as a whole.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And then, you know, in Berkeley, it's very known for its school, UC Berkeley there. And student debt is an issue. Can you talk about student debt and how it affects Berkeley?
Yeah, so for example, one thing that really brought me to the University of California as a whole was that it's a public education system. According to the according to the California Master Plan, the University of California was supposed to be low cost or affordable for all California residents, regardless of their income. Right now, it seems to be profit motivated. Tuition's at $13,000 that people have to bring every semester, but it doesn't account for the cost of living. It doesn't account for basic needs. And so there are many students who are suffering from taking out loans, as well as unable to provide for their basic needs, that have to go to school here. The university isn't helping those who are first generation college students, or those who are pushed out of the university as a whole already, and getting them back in to finish their degrees. Across the United States, for whatever reason, you need a bachelor's degree in order to have uh, a job that is a white collar or office desk or clerical position. Instead, the university is really saying, we want those who can perform well on the test, get us the best grades, and really are profitable, rather than those who need it most, which are low income, poor people of color who populate California as a whole. Instead, the university, and while they should encourage international and national or interstate students from attending, they're not doing the job of making sure that students who have grown and lived in Berkeley, Oakland, and the Bay Area as a whole are getting into that university with all the prestige that comes with it. And they're not working towards the elimination of private material for college. Information should be free. However, the university instead is moving towards privatization. And so students are disproportionately affected by the stress and by the lack of care that the university is doing. And it's because they have bloated administrative budgets. They hire more people to do dean positions than they do for faculty professors or students who are teachers to have an income level that, or income that's survivable in the city. And we really do need to rethink how public education as a whole is going to look forward in California.
Excellent. Um, so one of the four pillars of the Green Party is grassroots democracy. Um, do you see any changes, or what's your view on the democratic process there in Berkeley? I know you guys have ranked choice voting.
Mhm. So outside of ranked choice voting, right now, the Berkeley City Council is in a state of affairs in which it seems like people voice their opinions for better or for worse, and the city council can speak against that opinion and will do whatever they want to do. It doesn't seem like there's a conversation happening in the city of Berkeley. It's people talking and then people doing what they were going to do, regardless of the information they obtained. One thing I'd like to do as mayor is change the procedure of debate. For example, we can take half of speakers to really do introductory comments, and then the council can preside and really open the floor back up to the people who are taking time off of their busy schedules to come to these meetings and really say, well, I heard from the council that this was a problem. I just really want to clarify this information. That back and forth, that's what the mayor does. That the mayor, other than being a symbol of the city, really has the power to generate dialogue in the city of Berkeley or in cities as a whole. They have the power to prioritize budgets and make sure that people feel included in the decision-making process. What I want to do is make sure that people have a voice in the city. And right now, people do not feel heard or respected by the way the city is managing. So that's really where I come in with grassroots democracy, is that I want to know who is being disproportionately affected by policy. Can we get their voices here? Do they have suggestions? And how can we work with you? I don't want people to feel like we're taking public comments and leave it at that. I want public decision making. And that's what the city of Berkeley, in order to thrive and not hurt itself as a whole, needs to start doing.
Excellent. And then, so it sounds like you want to increase people's ability to be heard, or the exercise of free speech. Is that something that you feel is important then?
Absolutely.
Excellent. And what about, what are your views on policing? And are there any specific issues on policing there in Berkeley?
Yeah, and before I talk about policing, more so than protecting people's free speech, I'm fundamentally concerned about protecting people's universal human rights or basic human rights, which include free speech and expression, but also it includes the right to work, the right to food, the right to adequate shelter. Those things are very important to me. As far as policing in Berkeley is concerned, what I want to see is more transparency as well as public decision making in, oh, sorry, it keeps flipping. What I want to see is more transparency within police keeping activities. And so making sure that there is an independent police review commission that's on the ballot, ready to go in 2020, and is working directly with citizen oversight committees is important. I also want to make sure that police in Berkeley are focused on protecting the privacy and security of individuals. And so no one has the right for either their vehicle to be entered upon without permission or their home. And it's so important that whatever we do, that people feel protected in the city.
Excellent. And then we did mention this, is that Berkeley is a ranked choice voting city. So can you explain to people specifically like what you want? You know, you want them to rank you first, and
Yeah.
I want to make sure we cover that.
So this is perfect. So ranked choice voting is a system where, let's say you have two candidates that are complete polar opposites, or let's say three candidates that are complete polar opposites, but you really like this other person. But if you voted for that person, that third candidate, it would spoil the election. You would take votes away from one candidate and essentially give it to the other. Instead, you can rank your votes by choice. And so if you really like one candidate, rank them first. So let's say you really like me as a candidate, but you don't want this other candidate to win. And so you're going to pick a secondary candidate, rank Aidan Hill number 1, and then put the second candidate that you would be okay with winning as number 2. And so that's what Berkeley provides, is that we have the opportunity, if 20 people are running, you rank 20 people in order of preference, and slowly but surely, the ones with the least amount of votes are eliminated, and their votes are moved to a candidate that would have gotten their vote had you ranked them number one, anyways. Yeah.
Excellent. And then, are there any other issues that your campaign is focused on that we haven't covered?
Yeah. So security is very important, cybersecurity, making sure that roads are maintained, that there's public democracy, housing is a human right, gender equity is fundamental in the city. So for example, one thing I really want to focus on the city of Berkeley is making sure that menstrual products are publicly available. There should be nowhere in the city of Berkeley where a public agency has a restroom and that menstrual products aren't in the city. And so that also comes into making sure that people of all genders are protected, that there's rapid response for sexual violence, and that we make sure that sexual violence in the workplace is a primary focus of eliminating in the city of Berkeley and taking those reports very seriously.
Excellent. Well, thanks a lot for the interview. Is there a website that people can go to either donate or volunteer for your campaign?
Yeah, so you can definitely go to Aidan, AIDAN, the number 4, Berkeley, BERKELEY.com. And then the donate link right now, we're using CrowdPack, but CrowdPack is going to stop working after a few months. And so we're going to find a new donate link. But definitely check us out on social media. That's where we're going to be most active. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. That's Aidan, AIDAN, the number 4, Berkeley.
Okay, excellent. And I'll try to do my best to post some of those websites where people can find you and keep up with your campaign. And I just wanted to close out by, you did mention that ranked choice voting and how we don't have to pick the lesser of two evils because everybody labels the Green Party as a spoiler party. But I just want to say that the Green Party does not take corporate donations. And it's important that we run candidates and that we run them early. Also, running repeatedly builds name recognition. And that's what you're doing. Many don't have the drive that you have to run multiple times. And I think it's a very rigorous schedule for people who aren't taking corporate money because you have to do the grassroots effort. You have to knock on the doors. You have to make the phone calls. You have to get out there and do activism. So I really want to thank you for running again and representing us so well. I think you're very promising. I've told you that in previous interviews, you're a very promising young Green, and I think you'll be successful. Yes, I just want to thank you for running for the Green Party and representing us, Aidan.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. The 10 key values are so fundamental to whatever we're trying to build in the future that despite how much the establishment does not want a third party in the United States, it's worth building the ground level or the ground rigor to make sure that an alternative future is available, because we don't have a planet B. All we have is us and each other.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Aidan, and we'll talk to you again, I'm sure.
Thank you. Have a great day.